Can you come through?
Here we go. We've had
Here we are.
She's like, yes, please. I'll have another. Oh, hello.
Give up. Excuse me, yeah, you're fine.
She's like, I'm still not impressed.
You do these all the time. Come on. Here we are.
Like, doesn't mean I want to.
Ah, she wants to do that.
Hello.
So this is Johnny. So I'll very quickly introduce you to our females. Actually, I'll very quickly shut the slides. There we go. And we'll just close this one just so that she's ready for training. So, introductions. So if you're looking at lionesses, particularly outside, they're 3 full-blood sisters, which means, or litter sisters, which means they're born same mum, same dad, which is not that common in lions. I mean, it's common, but usually when you see them in zoos, they could be half siblings because same dad, different mums, that sort of thing. These guys, full-blood litter sisters, and even despite that, they have very distinctive faces to us, but to you guys, they're probably all the same.
We've got 2 black pugs and everyone's like, how do you tell them apart?
Exactly.
You get to know them.
Exactly the same in zoos. So we spend years with them, so we learn who they are.
Exactly.
And we learn their personalities and all that sort of thing. And to us, they're very distinctive, but to other people, not so much. So the way that we ID them quickly and easily is we actually just have a look at their ears. So Zara, who's our lioness who sits in the middle of our hierarchy, she's got perfect ears. No marks or anything on them at all. Jane here, she's got a small slice in her left ear. She's holding it back a little bit at the moment, but as she turns around, you might see the little nick in the top. That's an old injury going back to when she was a cub. And then Jemmy has got a big chunk out of the opposite ear. So if we have a look at the ears, it's a really easy way of telling who's who. And that's a very common means of identifying animals in the wild as well. If you're doing studies, field studies and stuff, you look at what scars, spots, scratches, marks, nicks that they've got. And you do your IDs from that. So this is Jane. I'm going to run through a quick training session with her. As I mentioned coming up, this is all part of our medical husbandry, and this is why we do what we do. So the behaviours that I'm going to ask her to show us are things that we can actually do checks to make sure that she's alright. And I heard Naomi talking about some of it already. So things like checking their teeth, checking the weight, checking their underside, so that's where there's going to be any nasty wounds. If there are going to be nasty wounds, they're typically there, because it's when they're softest. All that kind of thing, checking their joints, ideas, nose, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to run through the behaviours, and you're going to hear me using a clicker. So I'm not sure if you guys have been involved with animal training in the past, and particularly you'll see this used with dogs and stuff like that. Usually when you're training pets at home though, your bridge, which is your link to a behaviour and a reward, is going to be something like good boy, good girl, which is good for a pet because they know you as an owner and they learn you and they trust you and they respond to you. But it's a really good chance that they're not going to do the same behaviour for a visitor whose voice they don't know. So in zoos, that's not going to work. For one, because we move around, we don't stay here at one zoo forever. Usually we move on before the end of a lifespan of a particular animal. So they have to respond the same way to whoever's doing the training. And so we use a clicker because the sound's consistent. And so I could use it, I can ask them to do things, and in the bridge, the click, the confirmation they've done the right thing is going to be consistent. Naomi could do it, Amy could do it, and it's all the same.
So how did they learn it in the first place?
So we do what we call positive reinforcement and then capturing behaviours. So one of the behaviours I'm going to show you is one she's demonstrating already by herself, which is laying down. Natural state of being for a cat. And so it's very easy when they're already doing that behaviour, be like, oh yeah, good on you, click reward. And they're just like, what? And then they do it again, see them laying down again, click reward. Click reward. They start to build an association between the behaviour that they're doing and getting a reward. And that's when you can start introducing cues, hand signals, vocal cues, that sort of thing, and then they'll start doing it on request. And so what we get them to do, I'll just show you, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
And the ears come forward immediately when he steps back over.
Alright, so the first behaviour I'm going to get her to do is target, and that's a good tool for managing them, getting them to move around. So, target. The idea is she comes up, she touches the back of my fist with her nose, mouth closed, because my fist is not food, food comes later. She does the behaviour, click, the reward. So that's a real easy one. Allows us to manage them between the dens, and that could be, for whatever reason, it's our fist. But these guys, whoever developed the training, was long before our time. But it could be a target stick, it could be a tennis ball, it could be a laser pointer. That's just a target. The next behavior is sitting. Sit. So the idea of that is exactly what she just did. It's to sit on the scale. It gets her weight nice and centered. We've got a reader next to us so we can weigh them on a weekly basis and make sure that they're actually at a healthy weight, and if they're not, we can adjust their diet accordingly. So we feed them up a bit in winter to help with the increased energy demands of winter, and then drop that down again in summer. So at the moment, they're just on the tail end of the diet from winter. Pretty soon, we're going to be bringing them back up. So you're already down. I'm going to ask you to move. So the next behavior is laying down. Come on. Down. Good girl. So she did the behavior, she heard the click, and she waited for the reward. And the laying down behavior, one, we can get them on the scale, but they tend to hang their paws off there. I know. Which means it messes with the weight a little bit. But also it's just a nice calm position to get them in, and it's also an easy behavior, one of the easier behaviors to start with, because as I said, we capture the behavior when we see it, and we can reinforce it and stuff like that. And laying down, these two do it all the time. But being a nice calm position means that we can actually do a close check on eyes, ears, nose, all that sort of thing. When they roll their paws like this, we can actually see the pads underneath, which is extremely useful, because just a few weeks ago, Zara was laying like this. I think it was outside when we first spotted it, and we noticed that her dew claw had actually grown into her pad. It was massively long, like way over here, and was actually slicing into her pad. So we did a vet procedure a few weeks ago, trimmed all that right back. She had a fairly nasty infection in there, so we cleaned it all out. She was on, of course, antibiotics, she recovered. But we were able to do that because we could get this close and have a look. And then finally, last behavior I'm going to ask her to do is actually stand up, and that's so that we can check that underside that I was talking about, where if there's going to be real nasty wounds, that's possibly where they'll be. These guys don't scrap with the intent to do damage to each other, because it's not in your interest, either in zoos or in the wild, as lions, to weaken the pride, because that's going to weaken your position as a whole. In your territory, in your ability to hunt, and therefore feed each other, all that sort of thing. But accidents happen, and so we just want to make sure we stand up for that. So, Johnny, up. Yeah, so we can see everything underneath, we can see the pads, we can see the claws, check the health of those. We go back down. Perfect. Finished. Good girl.
I like that.
So, Jane is actually one of the keenest to train at all times, which is really cool, because it does mean that we can get her in there regularly, or pretty consistently, I should say, for doing encounters. And what I'm going to do, just to keep it a little bit different for her, to separate the training from what we're about to do with the hand feeding, is I'm just going to let her have access to this, and we'll do some hand feeding from here if you guys are keen. But do you have any questions about any of the training? She's like, what's next? She's like, come on. Come on. There will be more. She's the only one in.
Yeah.
Come on.
Where are you? Where is it?
Good job. So, when we would do an encounter, if we have multiple lions in here, we would do the training with one of them, and then we would do the hand feeding with another, just so one isn't getting all of them. But because we only got one today, she gets everything, so she's quite happy about that. But yeah, were there any questions around any of the training or anything like that? No. Can you train your cat at home to do that? Yes, you can. And do you need to?
You haven't
Depends how
many.
aggressive your cat is. Is anything like a lion? Maybe.
I think we missed the boat with him.
Yeah. Well, they say they can't teach an old dog new tricks, or an old cat, or whatever, but actually in zoos we are constantly training new behaviours into animals, and it is actually very possible. It's just a lot of animals are very good at training their trainers.
Yeah.
So they'll get to a point they're like, okay, this is as far as I'm willing to go, now you do the rest. To us, I'm like, you do the full behaviour, you do it properly. So you can train them with new behaviours and stuff like that. So with our different animals, we'll often introduce new training behaviours as the need arises for them. So we don't train them unnecessarily, they don't do tricks, they just do stuff, medical checks and stuff like that. Good girl. Okay, hand feeding, if you guys are keen.
Can I take my bag off?
You absolutely can, you can drop that on
Yeah.
the floor if you like. Well,
Thank you.
place it on the floor.
I will place it. It's got a lens in it.
Okay, so once, now that we're getting to the hand feeding, I'll just run through a quick health and safety brief with it. This is the point where if you want us to take photos for you,
Yeah.
Naomi or Amy can help you out with that one. Naomi's also got a tea towel here, just to wipe the room in between, but we will be doing a proper wash up down the bottom, stuff like that. So, hand feeding. You probably weren't watching too closely when I was doing it just now, and I don't blame you because there's a lot going on. But with these guys, the hand that you're going to hand feed with, or the hand that you're most comfortable using, is going to determine the direction you stand onto the mesh. So I'm right-handed, and so I like to use my right hand. The meat would sit in my palm like that. Now I want my thumb pointing away.
Okay.
Because if I use my left hand from here, is there an issue with my thumb going through? Yeah. We want it's always thumb pointing away. If you're left-handed, flip it around, keeps the thumb pointing away. But that's entirely up to you which direction you stand. We just want to make sure we're nice and safe. Now if you imagine my finger is the crossbar on the mesh here, all we're doing, flat palm, leaning the meat up against the mesh, and she'll do the rest of the work with her tongue. Okay. So the mesh is small enough that she can't get her teeth through, so you don't have to worry about your hand getting bitten or anything like that, as long as it's a flat palm and nothing's going through. And the worst you're going to feel, best, whichever perspective you want to take, you're going to feel quite a rough tongue licking that meat off your hand. So if you've ever been licked by a domestic cat, amp that up about 50 times. Great. And so she'll lick the food off, she'll pull it through the mesh, and then as soon as she has, just take your hand away. And the reason that we do that is just so it's not teasing them with an empty hand.
Yeah.
If the meat drops and it ends up on the floor, let me grab it. Don't go diving after it or anything like that. And as I mentioned down the bottom, when we're over here, please don't steady yourself on the mesh. It's really easy to do it on a reflex, but if you think maybe the hand's going to be an issue, just keep it tucked behind your back. Come on. And that way. Good girl. Continue to low, high. She will meet you wherever you happen to put your hand. So who would like to go first?
I will.
Yeah,
I'll
great.
put the camera.
Do you want me to take some
I should also
photos?
mention
so
this
it's
is
on
not
auto, everything's
this is not a
automatic at the
compulsory
moment,
part
so-
of the encounter. If you really don't want to, I
Oh, yeah,
strongly
one
encourage
thing.
you to try. But if you really don't want to, you don't.
I'm going to go left-handed.
I'll
I'm
come
going
over
to
here.
keep a clean hand.
There you go.
Thank you.
So thumb pointed away. So just lean it up against the mesh. Yeah, so it's a little bit different once you
Just
separate
give
the
it
yellow
to
line.
me.
There you go. Perfect.
Aw,
Easy as that.
you're gorgeous.
Who would like to do next? So we got a couple of pieces each, so we can do it a couple of times. So
I'll
yeah, we'll swap it around.
step back for a moment.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. That way I've still got a clean hand for the camera. Thank you. There you go. Don't want to drop that one. You'd make me cry.
Who would like to go next? Yeah.
What side are you going to face?
I'm right-handed.
Yeah, so you stand where I am.
Now, before we go, is that on this side?
Oh.
Or,
Sorry, that one.
Shutters.
that's that one. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, girl.
Leaning it up. Perfect. Just like that. Just pull it through. Oh, very excited.
Why is that?
There we go.
There you go.
It was delicious.
How long have we let that for?
Yeah, it was delicious.
There we go.
Yeah, for sure. This one's incredibly simple. It's running. Just point it. It's just
I'll
recording.
step over that way. From which way are you going to
I'll
go?
go right.
Okay. So standing just there.
I'll come over here so I can get a couple of photos of him. Sorry, I'll move this over.
Yep. So if you'd like
Very
to
good,
step
hun.
forward, just flat palm, against the mesh, just like that. Just pull it through. Perfect. There you go. See, it's easier than you thought it was to be alone. Yeah, adrenaline's probably pumping pretty hard now. Your heart's going, but
Yeah.
I'll still do that as well. So we can work on them every day. Who would like to go for another one? Yeah.
I'll just say, rotate.
Yeah. Juggle cameras.
Alright, thank you.
There you go. Swap spots.
I'm just going to get down this time for it.
Yep. So we just have to watch where the attention. There you go. Beautiful.
Thank you. You're gorgeous. That's the tea towel. Tea towel first, yeah. I was just thinking how I could grab the camera without getting that on her.
She's actually
Thank
very
you.
calm
You're
right now.
welcome.
She's on alert, but she's much
She's
more
very
chilled out
happy
than
kitty at the moment with how much
she is
she's
some other
had.
days, so. I should also mention at this point, lions don't purr. So if you can roar, you can't purr. So if you're happy and a lion,
I'm guessing all the grumbles that she's making us very
really likes you. She gets getting the rides that she wants. So these guys, even if they're happy, you're still going to just get a grumble, like low moan or something like that.
I was guessing that was her equivalent of a purr because she does it like especially when you've got
like
the meat out.
Yeah. So that sound, so purring has to do with, or purring or roaring has to do with the setup of the voice box. So the purr, you actually just, the cats have a bony plate that vibrates as the air goes past.
Yeah.
Quite restrictive though, so it doesn't let much pass.
Oh, I thought I felt
They
that.
can't roar.
I'll get that in a moment.
Oh, did I just turn that off before you go? Oh, I tapped the screen.
It's still running.
Thank you.
Awesome. Will this be the last piece?
You gotta go
Yeah.
high or low, hun?
Just brilliant. Good deal. There you guys go. Better lion.
She's probably getting to be a very happy lion at the moment.
She's got most of a bucket full each, and most of a bucket full this morning as well. She's a training session in the brush.
Like that, you said.
Thank
So,
Look at that.
that, as I mentioned coming up, is all medical husbandry for looking after lions in a zoo. Please don't try this if you go on safari in Africa.
Oh god, no.
It doesn't work the way you think it would. These guys have been trained this way so that we can continue to do health checks. And it's because they do live longer in a zoo than they would in the wild, because one of the main reasons being in the wild, if you develop joint problems or teeth problems or whatever, and you can't hunt or you can't eat, game over.
Yeah.
Because no one's looking after you, and no one's looking after you that way. Whereas in zoos, they have a roughly the similar, roughly an equivalent life expectancy to a domestic cat, because they have roughly the equivalent welfare as a domestic cat, which means regular diet, no competition to worry about, and good vet care. And so we are looking out for all of those different things, just so we can manage them as best we can. Make sure that their welfare is the best it can be. And so that means as they start to get older, we can do stuff like medicate them for joint issues and stuff like that, same as people do. You can do root canals and stuff so they continue to have a function of their teeth. I think you were talking about that earlier.
Like the problem with the paw before, that could have gotten so infected she couldn't run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the wild, that would have been a pretty big deal to the point
Yeah.
where she'd possibly end up not being able to move. And if you're no longer a valued member of the pride, the others may not carry you for that much longer. So that's just the unfortunate reality with social carnivores. But because we can do all that in zoos, we can keep them nice and healthy. In the wild, they do still need help, but it takes a completely different form, because in the wild, these guys are quite capable of looking after themselves, hunting, feeding themselves, all that sort of thing. Where they do run into issues is with a bit of competition with humans. So as humans have expanded into some of the savannas in Africa where these guys live, started sticking around fences and stuff, particularly farmers with paddocks and livestock, it's created a bit of a conflict with these guys because it's their territory. They're like, oh look, there's prey here and it can't get away. Let's go get that. Farmer's like, no, that's my livelihood. So unfortunately what ends up happening is baiting, poisoning, trapping, shooting. Usually on site, just because they don't wait until you've taken one of my livestock. I'll make sure you can't. So that means that there is a bit of a conflict there between humans and a lot of the large carnivores in Africa. And so we partner with an organisation known as Cheetah Outreach, who have cheetah in the name, but they work with a lot of large carnivores in Africa. And one program in particular that they do is called the Anatolian Guard Dog Project, and it aims to introduce one of these guard dogs to a farmer's flocks or herds. It adopts that flock or herd as its pack, so this is as a puppy. It's raised with them, and it essentially works as an early warning system. So if there's a predator around, it starts barking. Now for cheetahs, which the program was originally set up for, these dogs can weigh in excess of 50 kilos plus. They're huge. And so 50 kilo cheetah, who's a solitary hunter, 50 kilo dog. And as I said, coming up, the cheetahs are non-confrontational. They're just like, not happening. And so exceptionally effective with cheetahs. It's been surprisingly effective. It was never intended to be, but it's been surprisingly effective with lions and stuff like that. So half a dozen lionesses, one barking dog. Lionesses have lost the element of surprise, and now it's a much harder hunt. And if they do still try, there's going to be a conflict because something's actually defending. So it's a lot easier for them to wander off and go and grab the antelope who are in the savannah that they're supposed to be hunting in the first place. So it's a win-win. So,
alarm system.
exactly. And it's been amazingly effective, as I said. So some of the farms that were recording huge stock loss a year, they're monitored for the first few years that the dogs are there. They were recording maybe 50% stock loss a year, they're down to 5%, like huge reductions just after a couple of years. And so the farmers were really happy with this arrangement. One, because these dogs are now protecting their livelihood and not losing nearly as many animals to them. And two, having the predators around outside of your paddocks actually help keep the neighbors at bay as well. You don't have to worry about people getting onto your land to nick your animals if you've got lions on your land, and everyone knows that. So they've gone from actually trapping poison and shooting these carnivores to protecting them, which is really, really cool. And so win-win for both sides. And the reason that I'm mentioning all of that is we run these encounters, and a portion of the proceeds goes directly to our conservation fund, which funds about a dozen programs around the world like cheetah outreach. And so you guys have directly contributed to looking after these guys in the wild, while you come here and just take a very fanfare and seeing how we look after them too. So thank you for that. She's gone relaxed. This is a perfect
Oh, she's
relaxed
happy.
lion. Yeah.
A very full belly, and she's like, thanks very much.
So she was doing a little bit of pacing at the time we were doing some feeding. That's just anticipation of food. So she's like, okay, we're finished. Chill out.
Quite content, isn't she? Probably go find a nice good warm spot and flop and sleep
Oh,
for the
she
day
will.
now.
She'll go out. She'll walk down wherever her sisters are, and they'll probably end up on top of the rocks in a minute. They'll sun themselves up
And
there.
they'll smell that she's had the horse and be like,
Oh, no, they'll probably be
Yeah.
like, I still can't be bothered.
yeah, like, no, it wasn't worth it.
But that's over. So, did you guys have any other questions about the lions while we're here? Just hanging out?
Is it tempting to pat their ears? Because before she came in and she put her head up against the cage, it was like, ah,
Not so much.
no, you've seen what she does.
Well, we have them under general anesthetic. All the carnival teams down there going, pat. When
So
we've
we
got
eat,
the,
but when
yeah,
she's
when
out,
we've got
yeah.
the assistance of some
He's make up
fairly
for it
potent
then.
induction drugs, yeah. But what she was doing with the head rub before, that's actually a sign of trust. That's a breeding between large cats.
Okay.
Because it's all a cheetah. And so if you trust each other enough to rub heads, then it's a bond-forming behaviour.
Yeah.
They'll do that to us as well, which is what she was doing. So
Yeah, 'cause
that's what they
obviously-
did to us. And so occasionally, we'll do flat palm and meet on the other side.
Yeah.
Johnny is the only one that does that.
Oh, okay.
Kind of regularity. Jimmy's done it occasionally. I don't think Zara's ever done that for me. So
Yeah.
it's just, these guys develop individual bonds with their individual keepers, which is one of the reasons I enjoy working with them so much, and carnivores in general, because the relationship you got is special, and that tends to be why we keep a lot of carnivores, social carnivores, as pets. It's for that same bond.
Yeah, always avoid it. And those big ears, you would love to.
Yes.
Especially the way she just rubbed her head against the cage before.
So these guys, the fur is quite coarse actually.
Yeah.
It, if I had to describe it to something that people could relate to, I would say it's like an old carpet. So, not that appealing, which might be one of their saving graces when it's come to the fur treatment stuff traditionally, because things like tigers have fur as soft as kittens, and so that's been a big problem. These guys, it's not nearly as interesting, and so they've done a lot better out of it. They are still, as I mentioned, there is still competition with farmers and stuff like that, so numbers are decreasing. There's also still trophy hunters and stuff, and there's still traditional hunting, like rites of passage and stuff, with a lot of African tribes are still practice traditional, I guess, I was about to say behaviours, that's a description of what animals do. Not behaviours, but traditional cultural things and stuff like that. But that only accounts for a very, very, very small percentage of lions coming up against humans and stuff like that.
Those paws are gorgeous, how big they are.
What's she weigh?
So good average weight for a lioness is about 130 kilos, and I think the last weight we got off her was around 135. So that's pretty good. The males, by comparison, weigh about 180 to 200.
Oh, wow.
So they're significantly larger.
But they don't do as much of the hunting, they don't do much at all, do they?
They do most of the defense, and that's what the big mane's for, that's what the bulk is for. It's pure defense, it's defending and fighting against other male lions. Defending your own
Looking
position.
after
more
it,
than anything.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, she's quite happy now.
Yeah.
She's waiting for that door to open so she can go flop.
So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly, we're just going to make our way back down, we'll wash up our hands, stuff like that,
Yeah.
finish up. You guys are welcome to wander the zoo for the rest of the day. Yeah.